Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kim BOYKIN, Chair of the United Way African American Partnership Cabinet. AAP is proud to celebrate Black History Month, honoring one of the thought leaders and architects of AAP, Conchita Robinson. We appreciate your participation today and encourage you to continue to remain active with AAP during our spring calendar, culminating with our 5th annual AAP Day of Service on June 16th. I'd like to give special thanks to our AAP Cabinet who have made today's event possible, as well as our corporate partners who advance AAP's signature cause, powering the potential of African American boys and young men toward academic achievement. Now in year 7 of our investment, AAP's signature cause has expanded our pipeline of literacy and STEAM programming, career exposure, digital literacy, from 6th grade to college and the workforce. This year, we're on the brink of achieving $1 million in net revenue going specifically to AAP, powering the potential partners. We are excited about this important benchmark that bridges a critical education gap for young African American men. This work is all being driven forward as a result of the steadfast efforts of our AAP and our corporate partners. Today, there are approximately 4,000 boys and young men who have been recipients of this great work. The combined gifts of AAP members and our corporate contributors total more than $2 million every year, helping to advance the goals of our signature cause and United Way of Greater Atlanta's child well-being movement. And that impactful work brings us together again today for this special event featuring Conchita. As a friendly reminder, please tweet, post, and share your reactions and reflections from today's event on social media. Don't forget to use the hashtag #LeadWithAAP so that we can all be part of the conversation. It's my honor to now turn it over to Milton J. Little Jr., President and CEO of United Way of Greater Atlanta.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Kim. Your commitment to our mission is inspiring. From your time many years ago as leader with the United Way Shoebox Campaign to the 5+ years on the AAP Cabinet, our community has benefited greatly because of your service. The North Star of United Way of Greater Atlanta is to improve the well-being of children and families in the community, and central to that vision is ensuring that everyone, regardless of race, identity, or circumstances, has the opportunity to achieve their potential and gain economic stability. The Child Wellbeing Movement is our commitment to ensuring that all of Greater Atlanta's children have the opportunities and resources they need to thrive. Our pathway towards that vision is guided by a tool we created called the Child Wellbeing Index, a diagnostic tool that helps us understand down to the neighborhood level how children, families, and communities are doing. I hope all of you stay tuned to United Way over the coming months because the brand new data we just received will give us a clearer than ever picture of where and how we can most improve the health of our overall region. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest, Conchita Robinson. Conchita conceptualized and launched an organizational and professional development practice in 2003, delivering customized programs to senior leadership and frontline service teams. C. Robinson Associates Incorporated is a minority-owned business with offices in Georgia, Florida, and Ohio that focuses on delivering professional services which include transformational consulting, executive coaching, and leadership development. Prior to establishing her firm, she served as a recruiter with the executive search firm Spencer Stewart. She also acquired extensive executive management experience over her 18-year career with the IBM Corporation, where she rose to Vice President of Sales Initiatives and controlled a $90 million budget and led a $4 billion sales organization. Conchita currently serves on the University of North Florida Foundation Board, Jacksonville Symphony Board of Directors, the Jacksonville Symphony Women's Network, and she is the president of the Andrew A. Robinson Foundation. Of course, We know her well from her time on the United Way of Greater Atlanta Board of Directors and the Impact Council, and the very first cabinet chair of the African American Partnership, alongside the late Charles Stevens. Conchita is the proud mother of 2 adult sons. She has a 10-year-old granddaughter with another grandchild on the way. Today, we are humbled and honored to have her join us. Please welcome Miss Conchita Robinson. It's great to have you here. I was almost expecting some applause.
It's great to be here.
Oh, good to see
Always
you.
to have conversations with you.
Good to see you. So we want to talk about AAP, a little bit about sort of your history with it and relevance today. So let's just have a good old conversation. So it's like 23 years for AAP, going
wow.
back to 2000. A lot of people always ask the why question. Why? Why was it important to have AAP? Or then it was called the African American Initiative, and you stepped up as co-chair. So why was it important? And why did you decide that you needed to take a leadership role in it?
Well, you know, that's a good question. 23 years, I'm still thinking through, wow, time has flown. You know, growing up, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and growing up in Jacksonville, Florida, my parents, like many others, instilled and role modeled giving back and you know, doing all you can to make the world a better place. And my father was a leader in the education industry, you know, a teacher, a principal, president of a college. And what I learned true leadership was making whatever environment you were in a better one. So whether that was the workplace or the community at the time, yours was as a leader to really understand the environment and make it better. And you know, after I finished college, I joined the IBM Corporation. And believe it or not, when I walked into this office and wow, it was September 1st of 1982, my first role was as a loaned executive to the United Way. So I knew nothing about corporate America, as you can imagine, other than my internship with IBM. And I knew nothing about, you know, corporate America or the United Way, really, because our giving at that time was giving through the church or giving in the community, just helping others that were in need. But on my first day of work, 19 years old, I am now a loaned executive, so I am learning from my first day all about the United Way and the difference it was making in the community. And you know that role. You're going around to different workplaces and you're sharing. So I had to learn about the United Way. You're sharing with the employees the difference that United Way is making and how efficiently they do that work. And then you're also hearing a story, right? You're hearing a story of someone who has been affected positively by the work of agencies that the United Way gives to. And so if that's the way I started my life, as you can imagine in corporate America, you know, standing on the beliefs that I learned growing up, what started to happen is I of course was giving to the United Way from my first year in the workplace, and as a you know, on a leadership path kind of a thing, as I became more of a leader, I began to do more. I think Janetta Cole used to say, you know, talents and treasures. So I would give more of my time and more of my dollars to the good work that I was learning about that was happening out there and happening so efficiently, right? And with better numbers than most at the time. So, you know, I think as I began to get more involved, I was a board member, worked on a lot of different initiatives. You get involved, you learn more about the issues. I saw many people telling their stories. And personally, back then, I saw a lot of people that looked like me telling their stories, but I didn't see a whole lot of people that looked like me in the room that were, you know, Janetta B. Cole Society members or Alexis de Tocqueville Society members, or even higher levels. And these were the folks I know because I was a businesswoman. I know how decisions get made, and it's the folks that are leading and the folks that are giving that help determine, you know, what we're doing and what we're working on and how we're working on. Yet I knew there were so many other people like me that could be involved, that were probably already giving at these kinds of levels, but to other places. And I thought it would be a great idea to help more know more about the United Way so that they could see the good work that was being done and maybe join in to make a difference, to help define some of the issues that we worked on either, and then to combine their dollars with dollars of others who looked and thought like them to make a real difference in the community. And then I don't know, and then at the end, I guess it was also good to have there be more folks that looked like me that were a part of the funders as a part of just the beneficiaries of the work. So back in 2000, when I was then asked to do this work, it just seemed like, of course we got to do this work. You know, you looked at the numbers of those of us who could, because you know that research is there. Who can give at these levels? Who makes $50,000, $75,000, $100,000? And Atlanta had a lot of folks doing that.
Oh, I'm glad. There's a legion of people whose story is, I started work in corporate America, and next thing you know, I'm a loan exec or I'm out on the United Way campaign. So that is a great story, and some of our most passionate people share that story. And you had Charles Stevens, who was your partner in all of this. What difference did it make to have somebody like him side by side?
Having Charles Stevens to work with me was different. We had, you know, we were generationally different, right? Male, female as well. He was fun to work with. He allowed us to get into different communities that I didn't have access to. I think the key to this, though, is to make sure that we don't come at this leadership thinking that all African Americans are alike, right? We need to look at true diversity even as we are looking at the leadership of, you know, of the initiative or the program itself, and to make sure that when you look at those leaders, that they too have different backgrounds, even have different goals in some cases, because we want to make sure that we're having access to all of those who look like us, not just those who are in corporate America, not just those who are, you know, striving to be the best of the best. So I think leadership and diversity, even within an affinity group kind of a program, is important.
Oh, great. Well, you speak to one of the strengths of United Way, how it operates at that intersection of business and community, nonprofits, government, faith community, and leadership is found in all those places. And I think you're right. We needed to figure out how to get all of those folks involved. So what was the reaction to the community, to the idea that we were going to go out and intentionally look for African Americans to give and to play other meaningful roles?
We were accepted. I mean, there was no problem with this at all, because we started with a base. So it's not like Conchita Robinson was the only person giving at this level. Sure. You know, we had, you know, over 100 leadership givers. Okay. So when the data was pulled together, we could get enough people in the room to truly help out with this work. We had 100 leadership givers. I believe we may have had about 19 Alexis de Tocqueville givers at the time. So I could get in a room with folks and begin to talk about, you know, how we got here. There were step-up programs at that time, and I don't know if you still have this now, but it was like, you know, many had been at the $1,000 level a long time. You get to the $2,500 level, your income continues to rise. There was a step-up program that I think went from 5 to 6 to 7,500 to 10, with matching dollars from other organizations or you know, businesses or philanthropists. And you know, talking about that, getting each of us to identify folks that we thought could begin to step into this kind of a role of philanthropic role in the community. I think we doubled Alexis de Tocqueville givers in maybe the first year or two. I think we grew that 100 or so. Janetta B. Cole, and I'm not sure the numbers, but I'm sure we grew it to 200 in the first year or so, and even got it, you know, to 4 and 6. So the community responded. I don't think they had ever been asked, you know, and remember, we were doing it in a grassroots kind of way. You were inviting friends to the table. You know, I'd been involved in the women's group as well, and you know, and I've also been involved in some of the young leaders programs, and a lot of times it's just getting somebody to invite you to the party and talking it through, and you find that, oh, sure, I can do that. And then when you really get them involved doing some things from a volunteer standpoint, and they can look into the eyes of the kids, or they can make a difference in a family's lives, you got them then. You got them hooked.
Well, just how you're telling the story must be an example of the kind of energy and enthusiasm that you saw at play during that time. Huh?
Yeah, it was a lot of good work was done back then.
What do you think the impact was initially then, and what do you think the long-term impact of AAP has been so far?
Well, I would tell you, for the United Way, for the philanthropic community, and for our community as a whole, I know we have to have made a bigger difference than without these folks involved. I think that there were times when we got to change or tweak an agenda. We got to add programs to the list of things that we supported. We got to help to add different nonprofits even, to the work. I think, and this may not be a big deal to some, but I think having more folks that look like us out in the community making a difference to kids who look like us was good. I think that tells a good story. I think those kids got to look up and see someone that looked like them giving the hand up, and I think they grow up to know that they should be doing that kind of work when they get to be able themselves. I think to get everybody involved, all of us, right? It can't help but make the world a better place.
We were talking earlier about what it was like for you as maybe sort of the second generation of African Americans moving into corporate America, and how you had stood on the shoulders of some of those folks you had come after who had preceded you. So what's it like for you now to be at the vanguard of a community engagement, philanthropy generation that, looking ahead at some of the younger folks, how did you think you'd be the ones on whose shoulders they would stand?
I think we were wanting to role model. I think we were wanting to pave a way, role model. We always spoke about, as we help you do these things, know that we expect you to do the same. We spoke about that all the time. Everybody can help somebody, along the way. We talked about that along the way. Many stepped up. The numbers doubled, tripled. I mean, I gotta believe that during the first 3 to 5 years, we probably got somewhere close to maybe 65, 80 Alexis de Tocqueville givers. Hundreds, if not 1,000 or more, Janetta B. Cole. Folks were excited. We did things like Blue Lights in the Basement parties that were sponsored by corporations in the area. We made it a fun thing to give. I think it's still alive now because of some of that work. I know that I'm glad I did it then and I'm not having to do it now, because this seems like such a more challenging environment with the hybrid working environment, and you can't go into a place and have everybody show up and begin to talk about and tell stories. This is a tougher environment, but I know the folks that are leading now, right, are probably much better at understanding how the technology works and how you build relationships and get people to give this way. But this was, I think it was a little bit easier then, frankly.
Yeah, it might have been.
I think it was a little bit easier.
So giving is a two-way street. And you talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'd ask you to sort of go a little deeper into it, that you give to the community and the community benefits from that. But you also talked about things that you got, both as a professional running around and being the loan executive and in leadership of AAP. Talk about sort of what it meant for you in terms of skills you developed, relationships you developed, some sense of meaning that you might have developed?
I think I started as I talked about what I saw true leadership to be. Like, true leadership is running your business, being about the business, but true leadership is also making a difference in the community. I think leaders then and now, even though we talk about this hybrid environment, I think it's based on relationships, and that's how we get things done. I think my ability to pick up a phone and call you to ask you to help me to maneuver down a path that I might not know how to best maneuver. I think my ability to call on folks that I met then, black folks as well as white folks, right? To say, I'm looking for someone in this corporation, can you help me with this? I think because we rolled up our sleeves and we were doing stuff in the community together, we were leading initiatives together. I think we have a relationship that you can't take away. You know, it's much like some of the leadership programs that we talk about, you know, the Leadership Atlantas. And when the phone rings from someone that you were out there working with in the community, you answer that phone and you help that person. And that's what leadership is about. It's about the network you have built and what you can do with your skills and that network combined. And doing this work in the community is a must, right, to help you build that. And I think even more so sometimes for those for minority populations. Because you don't know, first of all, you don't know all of you. We don't know who we are, and we definitely don't have the links into some of the other communities. And this work helps that.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I'm just getting goosebumps just listening to you tell those stories. So, yeah, this whole notion of hybrid workplace. I mean, how do you think AAP can help both employers as well as African American professionals in these workplaces sort of feel a connection to the workplace, feel a connection to community? You think it's a potential tool people can use?
I think virtually we can come together, but I think the leaders in these organizations have got the people, they've got to get the people to come together face to face. I think we've got to come together. We've got to have real conversations about this. Is community work. We can't do this community work sitting at home. We've got to step out, meet each other and talk to each other and talk about some of the issues. And I think these groups can even help some of that to happen. And can help some of the relationships to be built. And I think within the affinity groups, but even, I mean, today there may be things that we can do to bring members from the different affinity groups together to work on projects for the, you know, for the different corporations, to have them show as they should show in our community, making a difference.
No, I agree with that. I don't think that any of these community problems are just going to be solved by an African American initiative or young leaders or women. Just as in community we come together, we as volunteers and donors ought to come together around big issues. And speaking of one, Tyree Nichols. The ongoing dilemma that we have in communities around police and community relations. What was your reaction to that as you heard the stories, and then I don't even know if you saw the video, but if you did see the video, what was your reaction?
I don't know. Frankly, I'm getting a bit tired of these kinds of situations. This is, but then this was black on black crime, right? So for me, there's more of a reason that we need to come together and talk about these issues in some of these affinity group kinds of situations, because it's obvious that these officers hadn't been looking in the mirror lately. It's obvious that they were more focused on the systemic, and I would call it systemic racism kinds of environments that they found themselves, as opposed to remembering who they really were. And this is tough stuff. And but these are the kind of conversations that we've got to have as a group of African Americans. This is a topic we should talk about. This is a topic that we should dissect. We need to figure out what needs to be done in order to not have this happen again and again and again. We can't blame anyone else for this. We've got to figure out what's at the core of this. And and do some things to fix it, to make it better. But it's tough stuff. But this is, I got to tell you, I probably have to do more self-talk when these kinds of things happen. And I can't imagine, because I'm not in a hybrid kind of a working environment, and I know I find myself talking with so many folks about this incident and this topic, and I think that's, I don't know, I think it helps me, and I think it helps my state of mind, and it helps me stay focused on the positive. But it's tough, and I got to believe a lot of those folks who are not being socialized right now, who find themselves in an environment where they are alone a lot, or where they just can't process this. I think we've got we've got 211 where you can call and figure out who can I talk to about this. And lots of times people say 211, oh, that's for them. It's for us, right. And I think we've got to figure out how to make sure folks understand that there's somebody that you can talk to, that everybody needs to talk to somebody about when these kinds of things happen, whether it's a mass shooting or whether it's what we experienced with 4 or 5 officers, beating a gentleman to death. Right. We're going in the wrong direction.
We are. And having said that, it would seem that AAP could provide a couple of opportunities for folks. One, somebody who's wrestling with how to make sense of this, to have, like you said, that network of people you could call, that network of people that you have done community work with, that you can sort of think about, what is it we can do? So there's that. There's also, there's a support group, there is the sort of action group, there's sort of the sense making of all of that. Do you think any of that is real, or is that just me making it?
I think that's real. I think, remember, this is making our communities better. This is a community issue that occurred. When we come together as a African American partnership, all of these things are things we need to discuss, right? You can't help but discuss it. The next meeting that occurred, it's the topic of the day. What just happened? Why did that happen in our community? How do we stop that from happening in our community? Do we have the kinds of programs around to do? That's what this is about.
Right. And rather than getting frustrated and thinking that the world can't change, you also have a body of work that AAP has accomplished that should give you a sense that there are some things that we can do as a group, and hopefully as an offset to some sense of hopelessness that, man, nothing seems to be getting better.
In fact, you would expect it of this leadership, right? You would expect that they're going to bring some ideas, that we're going to bring some ideas to this. It's something we've got to struggle with. It's something we've got to think through. If not us, who? We've got to put our best minds to this and come up with something.
Sure.
Right.
So as we come down to the wire here, sort of, there's another generation of African Americans in the workplace, a little different workplace. We've got African American leadership now that is working hard, and we'll hear from some of them in a short minute. What do you say from Mount Olympus? Somebody who was way in the back and sort of thinking about, the future that you built, and the future that you'd want them to think about building. What any advice that you want to offer?
I would tell you, I think events like this are good. Conversations that we're having are good. Even more so, the conversation that we'll have later today, bringing leaders from all around the city, from all around the state, from all around the country together to learn from one another, to share best practices, to share what worked when I was leading versus what's working now, to I don't know, just to begin to discuss what is the future looking like and what kinds of things can we come up with to kind of help make sure that we continue the progress. I believe we've probably raised over $30 million because of this partnership. right? And that's what we can count, right? We're not talking about all the dollars that African Americans have given at every level. We're just talking about at these leadership levels, and we have a voice.
No doubt.
And we've got to talk about what we think we can do to ensure the future is a better one. So bringing us together more, talking more, sharing more, brainstorming more, that's what we've got to continue doing.
No doubt. So continuing to invest in things like powering the potential so that young African American boys and young men have a pathway to a prosperous future. Making sure that African Americans broadly in corporate America, certainly in Atlanta, have a sense of partnership, have some people they can call on, role models and other kinds of things, making their way through this hybrid workplace. AAP's got a lot of roles it can play, and so I take your counsel and advice on making sure it charts that path and gets serious about that work.
Yeah, continue convening us. We need to keep coming together to talk about ways to make our future a better place.
Can't get better than that. Well, thank you, Conchita Robinson, for being here and sharing your wisdom, experience, and offering a pathway to the future for AAP.
So good afternoon. It's so good to be here with fellow AAP members. I'm excited to hear about all of the good work that you all are doing with the program. I've heard great things. Share with me, like, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, is it losing its win in Atlanta's corporate culture these days, or how's it going?
Well, I would say that I believe it's going and it's vibrant. I do think that, over the last couple of years, we've really been able to highlight the importance of diversity or affinity groups or business resource groups in the company that highlight what it is to be African American and the struggles. And so I'm very excited about the future of the programs.
And I know from my perspective, there are some companies who've been doing this for years. I happen to work with a company that on the onsets of George Floyd, we took a look at what was happening in the greater community and started our BRG. And I think from our perspective, we're moving now from a place of an emotional reaction to how do we actually impact the culture and impact the opportunities for Black professionals within our company.
Well, this is good.
Yeah.
For me, since over the last couple of years, we have expanded our department and expanded the work in each of the divisions of the company. And we want to make sure that everybody within the company has that sense of belonging and that opportunities are equitable for people that, may not have a college degree. They're able to move within the company, and we're also expanding our footprint in the community just to make sure people that may not have a leg up have that opportunity to grow and to thrive. So I really do believe that we are taking the steps necessary to make sure DE&I is prevalent, not just within our company, but within the community.
We still have senior leadership involvement in the groups?
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
No,
Yes.
this is good.
Because it's from the top down. It's a top down.
And how about metrics? Have we started to gather any metrics from this work?
I think we're starting to. At our company, we are starting to have metrics. We've realized it's important in order for us to know if what we're doing is making the impact we want. We've got to measure it and we've got to look at it on a regular basis. And our senior leaders are certainly doing that. And we had an initiative this past year where we're pushing those metrics down so that frontline managers and people managers are also aware of the metrics in their own groups. So everybody has a yardstick right in front of them to make sure they understand if we're moving the needle the way that we need to.
With that in mind, how do we create more active allies? How do we get non-Blacks more involved in the work of our African American community?
Well, guys, so I think the way that we did it, and I hope that it still works, is everybody still has like an executive sponsor or a senior executive, as you all said, tied to the group, I don't think that person always has to be an African American, right? So what we did many times was we would make sure that that person wasn't an African American. And the second thing is when you laid out the different agenda items for the year that you were working on, we'd make sure that there were times that we were having conversations or celebrating things, and we would invite others to be a part of it, right? Remember, this community work is about truly the entire community. You know, there are conversations that we want to have, I guess, in silos, right? There are conversations we need to have in silos, but the majority of the work that we need to do is truly across the different lines. So we need to find a way to ensure that leadership is as comfortable as you can make them, and that only happens with involvement with our group, and that we invite others to participate. A lot of the things that we're working on, the things that we're talking about, they're probably talking about them in their affinity group meeting, whether it's a women's affinity group or, you know, those who are Spanish speaking or Asian or however. So I think you're going to find that many of the things that you're working on are being worked on by others, and we will come up with better solutions if we come together to have those conversations.
How would you advise us when we talk about the politics of affinity groups? How would you advise, how will we deal with the politics that surround, you know, affinity groups? And what I mean by that is, like, you know, the name, the branding of it, you know, African Americans, you know, Latinos, you know, and the different ones. So how would you deal with the politics to really make people feel comfortable, you know, dealing with, you know, and supporting and providing the resources for us?
I think it's kind of what we just talked about on the last question. I think, first of all, we've got to make others feel comfortable being a part of our meetings. Okay? We talked about that being from the executive sponsor. We also talked about inviting others to come in and have conversations with. I think you've got to make sure that you're clear as you're doing the marketing of the group, that you are open to others participating, right? I think also, let's market the good things that are happening. So if the group is out making a difference in the community, helping to build a home, reading to kids in a school, come back showing pictures of that. Come back showing video, YouTube. You know, today you guys are doing more technology stuff than ever before. You should be, you know, while you're out there, people should be posting these things so folks see the good work that you're doing, not on behalf of the African American affinity group, but on behalf of, you know, the companies that you represent. Because remember, the benefit here to the company is that their reputation is being enhanced because of the work that each of these groups are doing individually, as well as the work that their entire employee population, the work that they're doing in the community.
I like that. I like that.
I think it's also important that within our companies, even though we represent our African American community, what we're really trying to do is promote the inclusion part. So we are crossing over to other ERGs, sponsoring or co-sponsoring or collaborating on activities to benefit more than just the African American community. We recently did something with the Latinx community as well, and supporting their Heritage Month. And I think it's important that we continue to do those things as well. We know that there are some issues and challenges that are unique to us, but some span the ERGs, and I think it's important for us to...
I will tell you, most of our community issues span. You know, as we hear what's going on, you know, with the recent incident, you know, in our community. Yes, there's some conversations we need to have about the police officers and what happened with that young man. But soon after we get, you know, those initial conversations happening, we need to begin to have some of those cross conversations across other communities.
Yeah, and I would just say that, and I think that that's why it's important that the work that we do as cabinet members for the United Way of Greater Atlanta African American Partnership and connecting the different ERGs and the BRGs in Metro Atlanta is really relevant, right? And so that's what really brings me about the passion of currently serving as a cabinet member for United Way of Greater Atlanta AAP, because this work that we're doing, bridging these various ERGs and BRGs together and highlighting the importance of it, I think is really important here in Metro Atlanta.
Oh, it's critical. It's critical that we all meet and talk. I know that I've taken some best practices back to my company from talking to groups that come to these meetings that we have quarterly.
And we find that we're more alike than different.
Yes.
So we have to
Yes.
celebrate that.
Yes.
All right, there's this topic that is that we hear a lot about lately, and I need you all to give me some insight to this one. Talk to me about bringing your authentic selves to work, and what that means, and what kind of conversations you're having either inside your organizations or even when you're at the United Way and you are having an African American partnership meeting. Talk to me about what that means. And remember, I am older than the others. So some of my thoughts may be a little old school, and I definitely didn't grow up with the ability to do what it is you all are saying here. So talk to me about what it means.
Who wants to take that?
I can start.
Okay.
I remember right after the George Floyd incident, we actually had an opportunity to have a conversation with our CEO. And one of the young ladies that was part of our Bold BRG, her comment to him was, I would love to be able to bring my authentic self to work. I have natural hair. I might want to wear braids. I might want to, however, I just want to be able to be me at work. And he kind of laughed because he didn't even realize that was an issue. To the fact that we had the platform, that we were at the table with the CEO of the company to bring this to the forefront. So it's that top-down leadership that he was able to speak to some of his leaders, and we were able to start having conversations about what can we do to ensure that our employees are able to bring their whole selves to work. And if somebody wants to wear their natural hair, their gray hair, their braids, they feel comfortable and are not judged. And I can definitely see a difference over the last 2 years. We don't have to have that conversation as much, and people are much happier. They're themselves. I too wear my natural hair at work, and I'm very comfortable doing this. So that's just one of the concerns that we've had.
Yeah, I think another thing for me when I hear that, I think about the conversations that we had after George Floyd at work. And what we found out with some of our network is they didn't feel that they had the ability or the right to talk about how deeply disturbed they were and have their ally coworkers understand that we were all hurting and needed an outlet to talk about how that impacted us, how it impacts our families. How do you go home and talk to your children about what is happening in the world? And credit given to our leadership that we went to them and said, look, we have got to have a conversation. We've got to have people vent and talk about this in a way that is meaningful, but still gives them the right to say, I'm not okay. And we did. We scheduled a conversation that was moderated where people, African Americans, our allies, anyone who felt impacted at all, came on and just spoke about how they felt. And I think that for me was the first time I thought we can come to work and be our whole selves, and we can admit who we are and be comfortable in our skin. And everything that happens in the world impacts all of us. And so for me to have one of my white coworkers tell me, I had to explain to my son why his classmate was upset and crying, because so they're having to have these conversations too. It's not just in our own families. So that opened up a whole new dialogue for the employees in the company.
And therefore,
More
we become closer,
understanding.
we're more one community, one group, and I can see the benefit in that.
They were tough conversations to have, but conversations we needed to have to bring that understanding. And again, like you said, it brings us closer. It's that connection, and I think that's what we need. You know, all this hybrid and virtual and not being in the office it's put a little crack in those relationships, but being able to have these conversations brings that connection back.
Yeah, the conversation, I get it. The conversations are really critical. I sit here and I think about, you know, all the hiring that we are having to do these days, and the onboarding. I'm imagining the conversations, because you probably get a lot of this, a lot of the succession planning as you talk about. I got to imagine that those conversations are so much different with this as one of the topics, you know, bringing your authentic self to work. Before it was just making sure we had a slate of candidates that was representative, a diverse slate. These are tougher. These are tougher issues to deal with. I'm kind of glad it's you guys that are having to work on these issues.
Well, one of the things too, I think that we're dealing with is not only you're talking about succession planning, we're talking about how do we get all the work done with the limited resources we have. So in AAP, we are meeting each other and we're talking, but the reality is within our companies, ERGs or BRGs, whatever you call us, most of us aren't getting paid to do this work, right? We don't have hours set aside to do the work. We do it out of love, but I'd like to ask you, like, how do we manage all of these priorities, giving programming that's impactful and meaningful to our community and our networks, and manage that with our day jobs and not doing too much, not doing too little? Like, how did you figure out what was the right mix?
I think a lot of this community work that we do, and I know it's you too because you're sitting here today, a lot of this helps us to be the best leaders we can be ultimately, right? It's doing good stuff in the community, but we are picking up skills and practicing skills that will help us be better leaders. So what I would tell you is, just as I would tell you if you were growing up to be the next leader in the business, you've got to ensure you're clear on what feeds you, right? So you have to understand, what are the pieces of this work that I really love, that I get good feedback from, and that energizes me, right? And I would spend more of my time on that kinds of things. I would understand what the other members of the group love too, and I would make sure that you are spreading the wealth, spread the work. The folks that are showing up want to be involved. They want you to give, them assignments. They want to be a part of the solution. They want to maybe manage little projects or be responsible for that community event or that outreach. Remember, this is practice for them too. They're skill building. This is professional development kinds of things for them too. You might have a little, somebody there who's a true introvert, but they're real analytical, and they can help plan that event, make sure we got all the things going on at the right time, but no one would ever give them that opportunity because they're not the socialite, they're not the one that's doing all of the talking. I would tell you, you've got to learn to, truly push the work down. We talk about that in our own leading. You got to give pieces of the work to others. Remember, this is a group. Right? This is a group, and you've got to grow the size of the group, right? And you've got to allow them to be a part of it so that they will stay. It has to feel like their work, not your work that they're having to make happen. So get the people involved, spread the wealth, right? Spread the work, right?
And with that kind of leads me into our next question, right? Because you're talking about, building that. And so now I want to ask you about the gap, right? So we still have some traditionalists. So you look at the different generation in the workforce, pretty much baby boomers are starting to, ease on out, transition and retire. But you can still have a little bit of sprinkle of traditionalists. But then you got Generation Y, millennial, but now we're starting to see millennial and Gen Z. Right, and so how do we get this younger generation, right, to understand the importance of these ERGs and these BRGs in African American? Because some of them, most of them have not had to experience what we've had to experience. And so how do we get them to stay connected? What are your thoughts about that?
I think we've got to listen to them.
Yeah.
I think we got to figure out what their issues are. They're going to end up lining back right underneath what our issues are. I would think, grandparents, parents, and children. We might not say it the same way, but in the end, we're talking about some of the same frustrations.
Right.
So I think getting the young group together and talking about what they see as, and really listening to them talk about what they see as some of their biggest challenges, and then giving them something to work on.
Okay.
This delegation thing is bigger than just your work at your work. We've got to get people involved. It can't just be, the 10 of you that are doing all of the work, and sometimes it feels like that. But these are big community issues, and we don't win them unless we have the entire community working on them. So in some of these cases, I might invite 3 or 4, and I would pick them. As we talked earlier, diversity, right? So even within your African American group, I might pick 3 or 4 very diverse young people that might not be hanging out together, and I would ask them to, I would facilitate a conversation with them and then ask them to pick a topic or two and recruit folks to come on board to help them work on that project. And then you just be there as kind of a mentor for them to make sure that it stays aligned with the corporate culture, to make sure it stays aligned with what we're trying to do at the United Way. But you gotta get the youth involved. You must. They are our future.
Exactly. Right.
Well, and I think we're going to have to embrace the technology that they use as well. I think AAP, we've done a good job of balancing in person with virtual, and this hybrid, the hybrid work environment is something that is not going away, right? It's here to stay. And there's new technologies and there's new applications and ways that we can reach people. And I just challenge us to continue to look for those ways and bring people in who know it so they can teach us, and that we can continue to be relevant and reach all the people, not just of a certain generation.
I think it helps us too, guys.
It does.
I am probably less technologically savvy than you, and definitely than those that you are talking about when you're looking at succession. But learning it while we're out playing on something together is probably easier than when you're learning it in the work environment working on a specific project. So allow them to lead where they are not yet allowed to lead inside the corporation. Allow them to lead in the community and really give them 80% of the rope. And you just stay there just to make sure it's a safe environment for them and learn.
Yeah, and I would say I think that that's a good way to answer that, because being a father of a 28 and a 25-year-old, I've come to realize that my way to really get them to kind of understand things have been to listen, right? And I think that sometimes those practices that we do at home, we need to really kind of carry, to work as well, because you're right, to get them engaged, we really have to listen and allow them to kind of help drive, some of the things that we're trying to get accomplished.
I think it's healthier too, guys. I think it's healthier for us. We've got to figure out how to divide it. And,
This is such a great conversation, and I guess as we wrap it up, I have one question specifically for you. As we talk about the young people and we talk about what are your thoughts on self-care? Do you have a particular regimen? What do you do to still look like you look 20 years ago?
Enthusiastic and passionate about the work.
I truly believe in this, guys, and that's what I mean. And I said that, and I don't just want you to let it go over your head. This is extra, right? So you said it. This is not what they pay you for. This is something you're choosing to do. So it has to be something that you love, that feeds you. You got to get something back from it. I like working on different initiatives. I like doing board work because I just like the business of business. But at the same time, I know that I like going out when, people force me to do it because I always say I don't have time. But I like sitting in the rocking chair with the kids there on the floor and reading a book, because in the end, it really feeds me somehow.
Okay.
You gotta know what feeds you. You really gotta do the introspection to understand who you are, what your skills are, what your talents are. You gotta say, okay, I agree, I'm gonna give some of that, but I need something too. And what is it that I need? And put yourself in the environment that allows you to get it. And it's okay, because it's like you're holding up the world, right? So you gotta take care of the caregiver. You gotta take care of the person that's doing all of this extra work. And you got to make it look like this, because otherwise you're not going. No, what I mean is you can't be like, oh, who's going to follow that, right? I mean, you're trying to build a succession plan. You want the young people to get involved. They're not going to say, oh, well, it killed my grandmama, so I'm not going to work that hard. You know, you're not going to do that. So it has to look like, wow, I want to be like that.
Okay.
So it's balance. And when I say balance, I really don't mean spend this much time doing one thing. It's true understanding of ourselves and integrating the stuff into the way we move. Know yourself, know where you're strong, know what you need, and give it to yourself. Guys, this has been great. I hope you've enjoyed this too. It's good to hear about all the things that are going on, and hopefully you see the real importance of this work. A lot has been done. You're standing on the shoulders of some folks that did some very good work, but now you are truly, I don't know, this is a tougher time in my mind. It feels like it is. And I know that there's a lot of hard work to do out there, but a lot of people care about this stuff. And I'm here, and appreciate everything that you guys are doing. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.